And now, on with the show.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Jeff Nerf Herder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Christina Yojimbo Henry. You can continue. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Well, I never saw Skyscraper.
You don't need to. I just told you exactly what you need to know.
Did we review? We didn't review that, did we?
We did not. We ended up going with the ape one. What was the one with the white ape?
Oh, Rampage.
Rampage, which I think we actually the fact that it was based on a video game was enough to lure us in.
And it's set in Chicago. They smashed Chicago.
They did. After a while, you just run out of cities to destroy. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to see them just all sit down and have a deep dish pizza. That didn't happen. So.
No, I just remember the Rock on his knees yelling "George" like at the heavens. Well, speaking of apes, should we get into this?
We should get into this because we're here now. So
yeah.
Welcome everybody. Every week we seem to say at the end of the show, "Be safe," and now more than ever, please be safe out there.
Yes.
It is chaos. Yes. It is absolute. I don't know what the hell's going on. One week we had plague, and then we have murder hornets, and now we just have anarchy. It's nuts. I don't know what else to say.
Do we have news? Like non-apocalypse?
Yeah, we're hoping to take your mind off of things. That's the whole reason.
Oh, so let's talk about a movie where the human race has been decimated. Okay, let's go. So no, it's not like we originally jumped on Contagion or Outbreak as soon as some of these other podcasts.
Right.
We're looking to entertain more than anything. Divert you for an hour.
So there is some entertainment news going on.
There is some entertainment news.
Yes,
good news,
please.
Actually. Jim Henson Company seems to be on a bit of a renaissance right now. Last year, we had new series of Dark Crystal, which was on Netflix. We actually reviewed it. Fraggle Rock's back on Apple TV. Disney Plus is moving ahead with The Muppet Show. We haven't even talked about that. But, Jim, you'll be very excited to learn that we have official confirmation that there is a Labyrinth sequel has been greenlit.
Yes, I saw that. That's all over the Twitterverse.
Is it? So Scott Derrickson, who directed Doctor Strange, is set to direct. And apparently this has been around. This has been in talks since like 2014. And then in 2016, when Bowie died, it kind of like went to the wayside, but now it's back. So, I mean, it's a sequel. It's not a reboot. It's not a reimagining.
Right.
It is a sequel. So I'm curious to see who else they bring back in here. But
well, everybody is pining for Tilda Swinton as the Goblin King. And I saw a couple of tweets saying it would be genius if Jennifer Connelly came back as the Goblin King.
Oh, I like that idea.
Yeah.
I saw one that suggested Janelle Monáe, which I also would really like.
Oh, yeah, she's very good.
I mean, I think it'd be great to get a great singer in there, and she's definitely that. So
well, I guess there was also
so that's the question: is it going to be a musical?
There was talk that they were gonna reimagine it for the stage. So maybe it's. I mean, it never happened, but it could very well be an amalgam of. But yeah, you do need someone in there that's gonna be able to have the chops to stand into Bowie's role.
Whoever's making this, I hope that they're aware that it will be compared to the original.
Which was not that, it wasn't, I mean, it's kind of a cult classic now, and it's one of my sister's absolute favorites, but it wasn't like a big hit when it came out, right?
No, it wasn't.
Right, yeah.
It was a disappointment.
Right.
And, I'm a Bowie fan. I'm not a huge fan of the movie, but, I like the songs. And
you like his tight
I
pants?
appreciate it. How can you not like the tight pants?
Well, that's how you tell I know it's right. So I thought that was very exciting. Obviously, as more news comes out, we'll stay on top of it. The other thing is, which we don't normally dive into the DC universe, but I find this absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure you guys know by now. So back in 2017, Justice League was dropped, and it wasn't a big, huge hit, but it was famous for the fact that Warner Brothers hired Zack Snyder, who was pretty well-known director, 300. He had a very unique style. And then they pulled him. And Joss Whedon was brought in, finished up this movie. And ever since that movie dropped, people were like, this sucks, we hate it. And rumors were swirling that there was a Zack Snyder cut of this movie out there somewhere. And I guess that's not the case, but now HBO Max, which is, I guess, their new streaming service,
Yes.
has ponied up $30 million to allow him to go back and refilm his original story, script, whatever it is, including all the actors coming back. And this is going to be like a 6-episode miniseries on HBO Max. And from my understanding, it's going to be vastly different than what the theatrical cut was.
Well, they're treating this as if it's some lost cinematic artifact.
But it's not, because they're refilming it.
But no, I read something that they actually filmed it, but they didn't add the post-production. So he actually filmed his, the actual production was done, but they'd never finished it. And then personal tragedy took him away from the production, and then Joss came in.
Right, that was his daughter.
Oh, so it wasn't. So he wasn't like pulled from the. This was
no.
Sorry,
they didn't fire him or anything.
Okay, all right. I guess all right, because that didn't make any sense to me. Why, I mean, we've seen it with Marvel. They pulled that before, which they pulled in these acts. I forgot about that. Okay,
right. So without knowing what his version entails, like a lot of DC fans have been trending, hashtag release the Snyder cut.
Right. Correct.
And nobody knew if it actually existed or not.
No, it was right. Exactly. Yeah.
And then who's the guy that plays Aquaman? I forget his name. Jason Momoa. He confirmed that he saw a rough cut of the Snyder cut. And ever since then, people have been up in arms. Oh, you got to release it. You got to release it.
But why? But I mean, I'm curious, though. Why was the theatrical version so different then? I mean, if Joss Whedon was brought in to just kind of wrap this up.
Yeah, I don't know. But
this is huge, because if it's that different than the theatrical cut, then are we just, like, if you're invested in the DC universe, the DCU, as they call it, do you just forget about the theatrical cut now, and that going forward this is like
and is it any good? Are there real fans of Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman?
I mean, I hate
there?
to say it, there are fans of Man of Steel. And Henry Cavill, he's said point blank he doesn't want to play this character anymore, and yet supposedly he's coming back for additional filming. He couldn't even show up in a cameo at the end of Shazam.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and I'll really hold my tongue because I don't want to turn this into a gripe fest, but
no, let's gripe.
Dawn of the Dead, and Christina will back me on this one. It's not the greatest remake ever made. I won't go down that path because this is not an episode about Dawn of the Dead, but Zack Snyder directed Dawn of the Dead and reimagined it is putting it lightly. And for fans of the original George Romero version, it was a slap in the face. I said this before, but I was like a white knuckle flyer sitting in the theater, gripping the armrests in outrage at some of the things.
But see, I think that's the problem with these, and we're going to get into it with this very episode, this idea of reimagining. Take something that it's a piece of crap to begin with, and reimagine. Don't take like a classic movie like Planet of the Apes or Dawn of the Dead that has a huge cult following and is revered, and somehow think that you're going to make it better.
Well, I mean, I think that there is a way to, not to improve on, but to at least contribute substantially, like, to the mythology of the original. And, like, the most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy did that.
Yes, I agree.
So,
those are phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to look at, like, an older work and say, like, I want to add to this universe or whatever, but just to like put a period on this discussion, Zack Snyder is not my favorite director. We'll just leave it there.
Okay, fair enough.
But it is very interesting that HBO Max is going to these lengths to finish the Snyder cut and make it available.
Well, you think about all these streaming services now, and you're all fighting for content, and this is a known entity. Look at Marvel. With all the Disney Plus shows that they have in development right now, they've all got brand recognition, whether it's Loki or if it's Vision and Wanda, all those things. So DC's looking at this and they're like, it's almost a no-brainer. $30 million for a 6-episode, miniseries. I mean, you're talking like it's going to be event TV in the sense of like when we were kids, watching V.
Right. So if they're refilming scenes to finish this up, that means all the original acters need to come back, including
that's what
Cavill.
I understand. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Which they've all agreed to come back. Which is I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll find out. It seems a little ambitious, but hey, and it's set for 2021. Yeah. So
yeah, interesting that you said that, Jeff, about event television. Like, and you brought up V. Like, it was so different though. When we were younger and we were watching TV, there's a limited number of channels, and when these sort of big event things came out, everybody
absolutely
did watch them.
It was water cooler. I mean, if you didn't watch it,
it was really
out of the loop.
It was a captive audience,
right? But now, like the viewing audience is going to be limited to people who have HBO or HBO Max. It's not.
But again, it's. Maybe I'm invested in these superhero movies, but I'm not going to spend $10, $12 a month for HBO Max. Now you're almost same thing with when Disney Plus dropped with The Mandalorian. It's like, I guess I got to buy this now. We'll see.
And now that they're committed to releasing the Snyder Cut, now there's a lot of talk. Well, now that they're doing this, what about Suicide Squad? What about,
Last Skywalker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Last of the Jedi, whichever one it was. Rise of Skywalker, Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
I think people need to let go of the idea that any recent Star Wars movie will be remade or recut because those movies made $1 zillion.
Correct.
And they are not going to remake them for a few super vocal fans.
No, but again, if people who this hashtag are like, oh, we won. Yeah, well, be careful what you wish for because it may suck. Well, it can't really be any worse than what came out. So anyways, we're moving on. Better news, Disney reopen dates. I have July 11th for Magic Kingdom and Animal Kingdom, and then the 15th for Epcot and Hollywood Studios.
Okay.
But again, it's got to be, phase 1, so we're only talking maybe 25% capacity. These rules are all over the place, and no one seems to have a concerted game plan in how each one of these entities are really going to be able to deal with this. Are they going to force masks? Are they going to force 6-foot distancing?
And are they going to close the park once their maximum capacity?
I would assume that
reached?
you would definitely have to buy your tickets in advance. It would hold true even for the rides.
And the hours, I'm reading the hours are going to be cut as well. So it's
so that means lines will be even longer now.
Yeah, it's going to open later and it's going to close earlier than they normally do.
Yeah. Do these character actors that are running around in masks, like Winnie the Pooh, is he going to have a mask on inside there?
Yeah, they're the safest ones, right? They're golden inside.
Well, apparently so like your Cinderellas and your your regular human characters will not be available for interacting. You won't be able to take your picture with a lot of these characters. So, I mean, you'll be there, but is it the same? No, not yet.
I saw the other day, because I follow a few Disney bloggers on Twitter, that they had reopened Disney Springs, which is, the shopping and dining area. And the line at World of Disney was out of control. Yeah. But apparently not because of super fans. These are the eBay pirates.
Really?
The people who go and buy 12 of everything and then sell it on eBay, and they have not had any income while World of Disney's been closed.
Wow.
So
gotta loot.
Because all that park merchandise is exclusive and nobody's is able to buy it themselves. Yeah.
Interesting. These are the same people that were selling those sporks from Galaxy's Edge for $30 a pop.
Yep.
So the other opening, which is Regal, Cineworld, who owns Regal, they're expected to reopen in July. And once again, what that'll look like, I have no idea.
They can't possibly have concessions, right? I mean,
if I can't get my popcorn, that might be a deal breaker. Do I bring my own?
How do you have people sitting in theater, eating popcorn?
I think what you'd have to do is like what the AMC model, which is you choose your seats and there's only X amount of seats available, and they are distanced 4 or 5 seats apart from each other. How they're going to enforce that, I have no idea. Listen, if I go with my son, he's sitting next to me. You know, if I take my kids, you know, I'm not putting my 6-year-old 6 seats away from me.
It doesn't make sense anyway, because if you're all from the same household, why wouldn't you sit together? But
no, I know. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all the news I have, other than the sense that congratulations to the astronauts who are now floating in space. Woohoo! SpaceX, baby. So kudos, Mr. Crazy Man Elon Musk. So anyways, that's pretty much all the news I have, unless you guys have anything.
Well, I did actually want to bring up the fact that the drive-ins are reopening here in our New York area.
You did mention that.
And because there's no new films to show, they're showing classics.
No new films to show.
The closest one to me is playing a double feature of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is amazing.
If I owned a movie theater, that's all I would play.
Yeah.
They're like old classic movies.
So unfortunately, I was not able to go this weekend, but if people are going, then maybe this will start a trend.
Yeah, no, that's actually very exciting. That's I like that, just to get people out of the house. I mean, even like, I think, you know, ABC and NBC are now showing Sunday night movies again. So, and I think Raiders of the Lost Ark was actually the first movie. I don't know which one it was, but one of them, probably ABC. Cool. I like it. There you have it.
There you have it.
So what are we talking about this week?
Yeah, speaking of classic films, we are talking about a doozy this week.
This is...
And a doozy of a remake. So this is the first in our series.
In the other sense. I'm going to tell you right now, both of you, I cut checks, $3.99 for each of you in the mail to apologize for the fact that we had to pay for Planet of the Apes 2.
The 2001 version.
Oh, the 2001.
Yeah, my son has some choice words for you, Jeff.
Good. Listen, as well he should. I was disgusted. I was disgusted with myself that we paired this up.
Now,
but if we're going to go down this road with reimagining and we're going to talk about remakes, I can't.
Let me just mention that Christina's son is very empathetic, and he's always trying to give more buckets to a movie.
It's true.
Than it deserves.
I want Henry on the show.
Complaining.
I think
if he's complaining about this,
that means I'm right. We're all right. This movie's horrible. This is going to be a short episode because we're going to talk about the first movie and then just be like, and yeah.
Jeff, bring us into this, because this is a brand new series that we are doing, and this is your pick.
So the series itself, do we really have a title? I think I said
no.
They were just called Why. What the F were they thinking? It really just kind of came out of the idea of reimagining or remakes. We do have some other movies that probably have better remakes. I think we actually, our text feed back and forth, we were trying to come up with movies that, you know, the sequels or the remakes were better than the original. And I think we all agree that The Fly, David Cronenberg's The Fly, is one of the more superior remakes of a movie. The original Planet of the Apes that came out in 1968 is just, like Jim just mentioned, it is so iconic, and it is such an original movie. And then, yes, I know it's based on a novel, but there's not a single scene in this movie, even if you've never seen this movie, you know lines from it. You know the twist ending. It is one of the most cinematic and beautiful movies.
This movie has made its way into many, many other facets of pop culture. So
absolutely.
Even if, like you said, even if you've never seen it, there's things that you're familiar with and maybe you don't know it comes from this movie.
Right, correct. And it spawned numerous sequels, animated series, TV series. It was probably one of the first movies that really doubled down on the toy tie-in and the merchandising long before Star Wars ever really kind of made a huge go at it. And we'll talk about our first experiences with this movie, but cut to Tim Burton, height of his career. Guy could do no wrong. And I think we mentioned last week he was coming off Sleepy Hollow, which again was kind of a reimagine, a remake of a much beloved classic story. And he was taking over Planet of the Apes. High expectations, huge expectations. And it bombed spectacularly. In my eyes, it is the worst Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
It's just, it
should
fails.
Be pointed out that technically it was a box office success.
Well, you and I'm sure I was probably there opening weekend because my expectations were there.
I was, yeah.
Yes. And so disillusioned, so disappointed in this movie. The opportunities that were there to make something so unique and for him to brand it truly Tim Burton-esque all fell by the wayside. And again, I always say no one sets out to make a bad movie, but this is not good in any sense.
You do get the sense, if you read the history of it, that the cards were stacked against him as well, because I don't think he developed this from the get-go. It was kind of like offered to him, and then he was rushed through it. Doesn't really forgive the cinematic sin that this movie is, but
no,
you got to take these things into consideration. It's not all.
I get it. There, you know, the fact that movies are even made. I mean, with the level of bureaucracy in you know the studio execs and the fingers that are involved in this stuff, but he's done it so many times where he's created such a unique vision for the movies that he's done beforehand. Just I think it just, you know, let's talk about the original first.
So it's based off of the novel by Pierre Boulle, who also wrote, and I had no idea, The Bridge Over River Kwai.
Oh, I don't think I knew that either.
And this was written in 1963. The rights were purchased immediately.
Yeah, before you finished the novel.
By Arthur
Spielberg.
Jacobs. Arthur Jacobs was the producer, and he was very, very excited about making this into a movie. He had done Dr. Dolittle, which wasn't a great success, but he had high hopes.
I love that movie.
But, you know, again, it's box office terms that we're talking about here. So he had high hopes for Planet of the Apes. Rod Serling was involved in the story in the early stages. Now, apparently, in Boulle's novel, the basic story is there that we know from the movie. But the ape society that they discover, that our astronauts discover, it's very advanced. So it's a futuristic society rather than the primitive one that we see in this movie. And the reason that they went with primitive was just budgetary.
In budget, yeah.
It was much easier to build like a very basic
mud
set.
hut. Mud hut. That set is phenomenal. I'm glad they didn't go futuristic because I absolutely love that set. It is so unique and so original. But I think half the budget went to the makeup.
Yeah, and that is really what stands this apart in its time. The makeup was just revolutionary because they really, looking at some of the features, they really agonized over whether the makeup would be laughable or not.
Yeah, I think that that was their big concern. The studio was really concerned that it was going to be a joke.
Yeah.
And they invested, $5 million or whatever up front to do test screenings with Heston and some of the other actors just to kind of get this right.
Edward G. Robinson was originally Dr. Zaius. They actually wanted him for the film, but he didn't want to sit in the makeup chair that long.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm old. I can't do this.
Yeah, no. Yep. Understandable. I think, but yeah, I mean, I don't remember the first time I saw this movie, but I do remember being at my grandparents' house. They lived on the lake. And it was just probably a little 10-inch square black and white TV, and it just happened to be on. And I was so sucked in, and I probably sat 3 inches away from the screen. So it might as well have been like a drive-in size theater to me. It was just like you just get absorbed into what's going on in this movie. It's just so over the top. And as a kid, you just can't help but be sucked into it.
Yeah, I know. Talking monkeys. Come on.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love that?
No.
Now, talking about futuristic elements of the plot, the beginning and the timeline is a little bit confusing and a little bit contradictory. The astronauts take off from Earth in the year 1972, only 4 years after the movie was released. So here's the deal. The spaceship is called Liberty One, and on the bonus features of the Blu-ray, they actually filmed a PSA from ANSA explaining the entire mission and what they were trying to achieve out there in space.
So tell me what the mission was, because it didn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
No. So they're in the Liberty One, right? So
and even I thought that the name of the ship was kind of controversial. So they actually, because I guess other sites that were referring to it as the Icarus. But I don't know if that was like
that's fan named. Yeah. In the original movie, there was never any name for the spacecraft.
Correct.
So that was kind of retrofitted. According to this little PSA, it's called Project Liberty, and the spaceship is Liberty One. Takes off in 1972. What they're trying to do here is send the Liberty One to the constellation Centaurus. And this is supposed to be a 4-year trip, round trip for the astronaut. But something like 5,300 years will go by on the Earth. So why they even are bothering to return to the Earth after 5,000 years, I don't know. But what they're supposed to do is go to this constellation, see if there's a planet that they can live on, and then come back to Earth and report their findings. It's supposed to be, again, a 4-year flight for them, but 5,000 Earth years. But in the movie, Heston refers to them starting a new Eden with this.
Yeah, because he actually makes reference to
that.
that. So 1 woman for 3 men, and she's somehow going to sire the new human race.
It's so bizarre because the proportion should be the opposite.
Right, right, yeah.
Purely from like a genetics point of view.
I hope they paid her more. She's like, yeah, guess what you're going to do when you get there?
It sounded to me like, just from watching the movie, that they weren't meant to come back to Earth. That they were like forming a new community to whatever constellation that they were going to. The spaceship is on autopilot, right? So it completes its mission by coming back to Earth. So with this retrofit thing that they've created for the Blu-ray, it's supposed to make sense as to why he's come back to Earth. The spaceship is gone and come back, and they've just never woken up.
Interesting. Yeah, but Taylor's a bit of a jerk because any opportunity he gets to point out that everyone they know and love is dead.
I know this poor Landon. He's like, he's everything this guy says, Taylor laughs at or shoots him down.
But even the fact that the ship is called Liberty One, right there, it's already little telltale signs about the twist ending, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So, and there's a couple other little things that I caught for the first time this go around. But you forget, like I said, this movie is so iconic. You forget that the first 20, 30 minutes of this movie is nothing but these 3 astronauts wandering through a vast wasteland.
And you know what's funny is watching this now, that was my favorite part of this
I agree with you. I thought it was because, first of all, I think it was filmed in Arizona.
Yeah.
But it's so otherworldly, these rock formations and whatever. And like you said, Taylor is just any opportunity between Landon and Dodge. He's a jerk. And he's like poking, he's like prodding them. It's like,
I know.
Not to go through like sensitivity training.
Yeah, these guys are just looking for any shred of hope that they can latch onto. And Landon even puts the little American flag up.
And he just laughs maniacally. And at first I thought, so the one thing we didn't point out was the fact that, so they crash. And I actually think that the way that they filmed this crash is beautiful because you never actually see the ship. It's all from the point of view of the port. And it's just this dizzying camera work, with the landscaping spinning around. And then all of a sudden you see the ship like poking out of the water, which the one thing that doesn't hold up is that you see that there's nothing below, 1 foot below the water line. There's no other ship. It's not,
But that's the thing is that in this PSA that I was talking about, they have a little model of the ship. And
so it's not much bigger than that?
Is what you see in the
Oh, really?
So basically, it's the cockpit and a room where they sleep. And that's the entire ship. So it would drive me nuts, even if I was in there for 4 years with 3 other people.
I know, especially when you think about, like 2001, where you've got this megalith of a ship, that you can run around in, and then it has, engine room and all this other stuff. So to send them wherever the hell they're going on a 4-year mission in a tiny little closet floating in space. When we crash, we realize as the ship is taking on water, we realize that Stewart, the female, is dead.
As a kid watching that scene and that psycho music that they play when they show her,
can we talk about the music? Because this is my absolute favorite soundtrack of any movie ever. And I do remember when I showed this to my son, even he was just like, Dad, this music is just like so crazy. And I'm like, it is so inventive and it's so over the top. It is such... It just takes this movie to a completely new level. And I can't say enough. Jerry Goldsmith, right? Jerry Goldsmith,
yeah.
Genius. Absolute favorite soundtrack of any movie ever.
And that's another reason why I like the opening scenes, because that really unearthly, otherworldly, and there's all these weird instruments that he's using. It gets more percussive once they get to the ape civilization.
Right. Yeah, because you get more primitive. He's getting into the drums. He's getting into the... it's crazy.
But that whole opening scene, and especially there's that beautiful shot when Heston is looking out the windows of the Liberty One in the beginning, and he's seeing these flares go by the camera. There's blue and red, and you're hearing, if you listen to the background, it's not really musical, but it sounds like the ocean.
Yes.
So it opens and closes with the sound of the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is, and it does have a Twilight Zone-ish feel to it, the music.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning. And it reminds me so much of the episode of Twilight Zone where the astronauts actually crash land. And at the end, he's all alone. The other guys are all dead. And he's wandering through this desert planet, only to come across a telephone pole that says Las Vegas 70 miles or something like that, and he realizes that he's been on Earth all this time. So I don't know which one came first, but the fact that Rod Serling was all over this.
Out of Rod Serling's draft of the script, the ending, the Statue of Liberty reveal, was from his draft. So that's
right.
Serling.
Correct. Yeah, because the book has a much more expansive ending where the chimps ended up on a ship and they go into the future or something. But yeah, this is about as clean an ending as you're going to get. Although I do have to ask, do you think our space shuttles are equipped with inflatable rafts and flare guns? Like, if you're going into space, why would you have an inflatable raft?
Well, they were going to another planet, right?
Yeah.
So
I know. Might as well take an umbrella while you go as well, right?
The reason why the beginning is so powerful is I can imagine seeing this, and the movie is called Planet of the Apes, so you know what's coming.
You know it's coming, right?
But the suspense that they build, having them in the first 25 minutes going through this alien landscape, you're anticipating, when are they going to find the apes? Is it going to be over this rise?
Yeah.
Is it going to be over this rise? Yeah. And it's just, rather than be boring, it's extremely suspenseful.
It's very suspenseful. And even when you finally start to see the other little humans that are showing up on the sidelines of the ridges, you know, you're like, oh, here they go. You know, and then they come across the scarecrows, and you're like, all right, now we know that there's civilization. So what they immediately do is they come across this oasis, strip down, and jump in and start woohooing it. I'm like, you just realize that there's aliens on this planet, and now you're screaming for them to come and get you.
I don't know. Those scarecrows are so creepy.
They were
Like,
great.
I would not be making myself vulnerable.
Yeah, I know.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? They immediately stripped down, and I get it. They're on the desert. They've been hoofing it through. They had no water, so to come across a freshwater lake with a waterfall. I did see his little tailor, by the way.
Were you looking for it?
Oh, of course I was. There was a scene where he's standing, the other two guys are on their knees on either side of him, and I'm like,
that was ridiculous.
Where are we going
wasn't it?
Here?
I'm like, yeah.
We're going Planet of the Porn Apes.
Taylor, at the beginning of the movie, when he's looking out the front of the spacecraft,
and
he's on his soapbox.
He's
talking about, does man still kill his fellow man? Does he still keep his neighbor's children in poverty, in hunger? Yep. And then the first thing he does is they find life, and what does he do? Rip it out of the ground, right?
I know, right? Oh, look, there's life. Let's take it. Let's kill it.
So here comes man, and he's going to destroy this planet as well. And Taylor's
which
right
is basically,
in front.
I mean, I hate to say we are the locus of the universe.
And
there's a reason I think aliens stay away from us.
They see the scarecrows, right? And he says, screw it. And he sees there's a waterfall, and he runs right to it like he owns it. But
that's where those musical cues kick in. I mean, it is batshit wonky, the music. Once they see that water, and they're all like, screw it.
But then he says, when they finally see the humans, he's like, this is the best they got. In 6 months, we'll be running
this place. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
And he acts more like the class bully than a inspiring captain.
Correct.
Yeah. And the other two guys, you can tell, hate him.
Yeah, we should have kept Stuart and killed you, dude.
And Landon, is somebody cutting his bangs while he's asleep on the spaceship?
He did have that nice. Yeah, because they all woke up with beards, but their hair was still intact. Maybe there was a Floby in each of their little chambers.
And you'd think they would have long Gandalf beards by that point. They just had little 2-week. I can grow a better beard than that in 2 weeks.
I did think it was funny that the wildling humans that they came across had better teeth than Taylor.
Yeah, and speaking of that, Nova, she keeps herself very clean and no hair on the legs or anything like that.
Yeah, well,
somebody does her hair in the morning.
One thing that I did pick up on this go around, and I will say the transfer on this was very impressive. I mean, I know you watched the Blu-ray, right, Jim?
Yes. Oh yeah.
I streamed it.
And the opening, the vistas when they're going through the desert, beautiful.
No, I know. Like I said, we were talking before, the rock formations, everything. But what was cool is when they're in the water and you see the humans and they're stealing their clothes. There's a shot, it's a point of view as they're running away, and it's out of focus. And I thought that was really interesting that you were getting from the human's point of view that they probably didn't have really good eyesight. That was what I took away from it, was this one scene where they're running and they're dropping the clothing as they're running. And it's fuzzy. So I thought that was a really interesting choice. But have you ever run through cornfields? That crap will tear you up, dude.
Yeah.
Come on. I grew up upstate. You run through cornfields and you're going to have some effects on you.
You've never gone through a corn maze, Jim?
A corn maze, but I didn't go through it.
Yeah, but even if you just touch the edges of the corn, you can tell that it's not comfortable to walk through.
No, yeah. But this is where you get the big gorilla reveal. And it is so, because you like Jim said, you know what the name of the movie is. You know they're going to encounter apes, but the whole reveal, you know, all you see, all the humans stop what they're doing. They're pillaging the corn. They're in the fields, and then they just stop. And then you just hear this noise, and they just all start scattering, and you see the sticks, and you see, so it's like this slow, and then all of a sudden, friggin' gorilla on a horse, and he's beating him with a stick. He's got a gun in his hand, and that sound effect, awesome. That horn, that's crazy.
It makes me want to go out and get the soundtrack now.
Like I said, it is my favorite soundtrack of any movie ever. Imagine being these guys, like these actors are in full costume on horses, riding through a cornfield with either sticks or nets or any other kind of prop in their hand, guns. I mean, that's got to be some serious work going on. How many times did they fall off? I would like to see outtakes of this.
We learn a little bit later that they're rounding these humans up for extermination, or they're moving them elsewhere because they're encroaching upon their lands. So, and it's funny, it's kind of what humans would do to animals. They're making frightening noises to kind of wrestle them up and get them out.
Yeah, round them up, yeah. I was chasing a woodchuck in my backyard an hour ago.
Making auga noises.
Well, no, I had a leaf blower.
But it's you see Taylor and his two other astronaut friends processing this, you know, while they're trying to run away from along with the other humans. And unfortunately, the one, not Landon, but Dodge, is killed immediately. He gets shot.
The only valuable member of the crew, right? The one who's a scientist and who's practical, and, you know, he's the one who has to get shot. Yeah. And, like, the jerk gets left behind.
The one who survives.
Do you see Landon get shot by the gorillas?
No, he falls into the water, and then I think they whack him in the back of the head.
He gets clubbed. That's right.
Yeah, and even that, again, these you know, these people they're like lemmings, and they're just doing whatever they have to get away from these apes, and they're falling over the side of the cliff, you know, and that's all stunt work. That's just, I mean, people had to get hurt. It's some physical stuff going on here.
Yeah, and like some of these people are not falling in the water. They're falling on the
ground. Yeah,
the water. Yeah.
Yeah, but the one good thing is that Taylor does get shot, so he's silent for about another half hour in this movie. So,
this Charlton Heston has the most massive teeth, I think, of any.
Well, that's
actor.
why I said you know, these Neanderthals had better teeth than he does. Yeah.
And he's got like an underbite, so whenever he smiles, his teeth come together. But I'm
going to say he like chomps on his words too. So
he is literally chewing the scenery.
Basically. But I can't imagine anyone else in this role.
No.
The interesting thing is, though, is like with his attitude, you know, he really should be humbled by the events of the movie, like the stuff that occurs to him, and he doesn't.
Isn't that like the 60s? But
his ego grows. His ego grows.
Right. I can talk. You can't.
Yeah.
But this is where we get the big reveal of the main set piece, which is Ape City, and this set is just.
Now, this also begs the question: is this the only community of apes on this planet, and that he just has happened to land like adjacent to it, or is the planet covered in apes?
That's interesting. I would have to assume that over time, I mean, humans evolved from one location and then dispersed, so I would assume that.
Or is the rest of the planet a forbidden zone that they can't go into?
We'll get into the forbidden zone because I caught something else for the very first time in this screening, and I was like, oh my God, look at that! So they do telegraph certain story points before it's actually revealed, and I was very impressed with it. So, but this is where we get to meet Dr. Zira. Say what you will about these actors that are in these costumes and these masks. I mean, she emotes so much through her eyes. Mm-hmm. It's insane. I mean, it really is. And you forget that she's an ape. She's a fully realized character, more so than Cornelius, I think. She has empathy toward the humans. You see her, you know, dealing with Dr. Zeus, and he's a bit of a jerk as well. So he plays off nicely of Taylor. But
I think it's interesting is, you know, obviously there's a lot of metaphors about contemporary human society.
Right.
But one of the things that really always stands out to me is that, like all hierarchical societies, the ruling class is actually the smallest. They are like, there's the least number of orangutans, right, that you see. but they control the rest of the population by
Mhm.
withholding information.
Which I don't necessarily think is. I mean, I kind of agree with what Dr. Zeus was trying to do, because he had knowledge that the rest of them
Right.
didn't. But there is a direct Animal Farm reference.
Oh yeah. Some
where-
apes are more equal than others.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, you're also, in the height of the 60s, which is civil unrest, kind of where we're going back
Yeah.
to right now.
Interesting that this was
Um,
filmed between May and August of 1967. So the entire summer of love was when they were
Mhm.
filming this movie.
This was actually released one day before MLK Jr. was killed, assassinated.
Wow.
Yeah. So that puts you in the time zone of where and when this movie, and probably why it had such a big impact. But yeah, it's this whole scene, and again, so you got Taylor is out of action. He can't talk. They're making fun of him because he's mimicking, and they think he's, they think he's what we consider apes.
He's a parrot. That's like he's a parrot to them. He's
Right.
a trick that
Yeah,
Zira and
basically,
Cornelius
right.
have trained.
Oh, look, he's
up.
trying to. Yep, he's trying to
Yep.
talk. He's just faking it. So then you get all the exposition of the apes themselves, who they are and what they are, and a bit of that hierarchy as far as the orangutans and the gorillas, versus the chimpanzees. But again, that shows you the fully realized set that they had, because he is now running through this city, and he's going from a funeral, and he's going through a museum. So there's all this other. So you see that there's a full culture going on here with these apes. They've got humans out in cages.
Yeah, and you can't blame them, right? It would be like us seeing a bear running loose and everybody
Right.
flipping out like, whoa.
Yeah, whoa. So, but this is this whole chase through the plaza leads to the most cinematic line in all of movie history.
And talk about Taylor's ego, right? That he's just
Right.
chomping at the bit to tell these guys off.
Well, like I said, he can't talk. He's been shot in the neck, so he's trying to do what he can to communicate with Zira. They think it's cute. He does try to write a message in the sand, which Nova immediately starts to erase, which makes you think that maybe they had the ability to communicate. Like, she had to have known what that was. Like, why would she have tried to cover it up before?
Well, I think she was just being playful with him. Like,
You
I don't
think?
think she
Okay.
knew what he was doing.
Gotcha.
And, like, she was just mimicking his.
But
movement.
Dr. Zeus sure as
Zeus
hell
knew what it
Zeus
was,
knew
yeah.
exactly what this was, and we go into the point that, Zira is referring to him as the missing link, and that's exactly what it is, which is, their worst fear. So yeah, you get that line, "Get your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape." And you're just like, yeah. So now you're kind of rooting for him. So yeah, the one thing I wanted to point out, which was when he does start to communicate with Cornelius and with Zira, and he's writing notes back and forth. And at first they think it's like a parlor trick. But they show him the map. They show him a map of where he was, where he crashed, because he tells them that he crashed in this area, and Cornelius immediately is like, "It's the Forbidden Zone. I know, because I've been there. Wasn't supposed to be there, but I was." And when they opened up the map, it's the Hudson Valley. You see Long Island, you see Manhattan. So that indicates that they were in Jersey. So it is grounded. Like, when he does come across the Statue of Liberty at the end, you're like, they were laying the clues.
Wow.
They were laying it down. And I'm like, damn, look at that.
Wait, I want to point out something that actually my husband pointed out in this viewing, and it was spawned by something that happened in the sequel, where they were looking up at the stars, and not the sequel, in the remake. And my husband said, why wouldn't Taylor recognize the constellations from Earth?
That's a good.
Yeah.
That is.
Because he's an astronaut, right?
Yeah.
Presumably he knows
Right.
about stars.
That would probably be the first.
And
Interesting.
really, considering the life cycles of stars, the sky wouldn't change that much, even in a few thousand years.
No, they do make a mention of the sun, because he says, "Oh, I don't know. I think he thought they were near."
Because he says he's in some
"No, it's
constellation. Well, the sun's over there. That means we're in constellation so and so.
Right. Well, is this Beetlejuice? No, it's too bright yellow or something. He says.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that they needed the cool Rod Serling twist ending, but
was there any scenes at night? Was he just indoors?
Well,
Yeah.
you assume that they spent days in the desert, right?
Yeah.
Walking.
It is kind of it's a bit ambiguous.
So even if
as
he
far
was
as-
jailed, because you don't see any night scenes in the Ape City, so maybe he's been
Right.
indoors at night there, but they were in the desert all that time, so they have to
Mhm.
be staring up at the sky.
And they never really once questioned whether or not you could actually breathe the oxygen. I mean, they immediately just jump onto the ship and they're
No,
like,
no,
Yeah,
he does.
they-
He does
they
do some
test
readouts. Yeah.
they
Okay,
test it, but I don't know. I mean, like, especially given that your ship has crashed and like
Yeah.
your equipment could
You're
be
either
on
gonna-
like
right.
crazy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have gotten out of that without putting on a helmet, but
Yeah.
they're all men, I guess.
Yeah.
and
Yes. ABC every day, Monday through Friday, used to show a themed movie. So that's the first time I saw Planet of the Apes, was on the 4:30 movie on ABC TV, and it was Apes Week. So they would play Planet of the Apes because it was so long. They stretched it out. Monday and Tuesday was the original Planet of the Apes.
Oh wow, I broke it up.
Because the 4:30 movie was 90 minutes with commercials. So it really was only like an hour and 15 minutes of the movie. And they really had to chop these movies and get them to fit into the time frame. So Planet of the Apes was Monday, Tuesday. Beneath was Wednesday. Conquest was Thursday. Or no, Escape was Thursday, and then Conquest was Friday. That's the first time I saw these movies, was on the 4:30 movie. All the kids would snicker about it the next day. Did you see his butt? They showed his butt. Again, talking about totally dehumanizing him in front of the tribunal. He refuses to back down, and there's that scene where Zira and Cornelius are talking that he must have sprung up from our world. It's obviously idiotic to think
Yeah, because
he
they're
came
not
from
believing the
stars.
story that he came from,
Yeah.
that he's an alien.
Because
basically,
Zeus
right?
thinks that it's a colony of intelligent humans, and he wants to know where they are because he's
Yep.
afraid of them. So, and he refuses to believe the story that he came from the star. At the end of the movie, they escape. Taylor escapes again with Zira and Cornelius's help to go to the Forbidden Zone.
And Nova
around
takes
where
Nova.
of
He
course.
was,
And again,
he was smart to bring Nova.
the total arrogance, like Zira tries to give him clothes and he's like, why are you giving me these dirty rags? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's
All
like,
right, then go naked in the desert.
why didn't you
Yeah.
just be grateful that she broke you out of prison,
Yeah.
you jerk?
Right, right. I just saved your life.
There's apparently a bunch of scenes written and footage shot of Nova being pregnant.
Yes, I do remember.
Yes,
Well, she was
yes.
pregnant in real life.
And
Richard Zanuck's.
yeah, she's
love
Richard
child.
Zanuck's girlfriend, later to be
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
But she apparently it was later discarded because an executive thought it was distasteful that because she's so childlike and not
Interesting.
really, she doesn't really have like a human personality, so
Right.
he thought that she would be like subhuman, and
Like
that
bestiality.
Yeah, and that
Because they
it-
did stick him in the cage with her at one point for the
Mhm.
purpose of watching them procreate
right, so all that stuff was cut out.
wisely.
And there was no plan in the beginning to make a sequel to this. And I think story-wise, that would have begged a sequel if she was pregnant.
That she was pregnant.
Yeah.
It's a madhouse.
Mhm. A madhouse!
Right. Yeah. He's got some great lines in here. But even when they escape and they're on the horseback, I mean, the landscape is just unbelievable. Like, I'd like to go back out there.
Yeah.
Arizona, I think, is where most of this was filmed. I mean, some of it's a matte painting. I think the ravine is an obvious matte painting. Obviously, the Statue of Liberty is a matte painting at the end. Although you can get to that cove in California, I think.
Really? At the time,
Yeah.
they were only able to get the equipment down there by helicopter. I think it was a
Well,
very remote
I was
location
reading
at the
something.
time.
Yeah, you got to like kind of serpentine around the coast, but you can get that. I doubt it looks anything like it does now.
Right.
It's
So
probably
speaking
6
of
feet
that
underwater.
ravine, like the end of the movie, it ends really on the beach at Cornelius's dig site, where he was when he traveled to the Forbidden Zone, where he wasn't supposed to be, because he's kind of like an archaeologist. You could say he's the
Yes.
Indiana Jones of the
Yeah.
of the ape world. So he's made some discoveries that kind of suggest that humanity existed before the apes. An
little
intelligent
more
man
advanced, yeah, I was
existed
gonna say,
before the
yeah.
apes.
Yeah.
And the deal is that if he can prove to Dr. Zaius that what he thinks is true, that they'll get amnesty, that he's going to forgive them of their crimes, and then let Taylor go.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. But we do
It's not
get
gonna happen.
we do get the dig site. So
Mhm.
Cornelius is sort of explaining, okay, I dug a little bit deeper here, and these are carnivorous gorilla remains here. I dug a little deeper, and this seems to be the odd thing is that the what I'm encountering is a more civilized lifestyle the deeper that I get, which should not be.
Right.
And then, of course, Charlton Heston has to weigh in. Of course, this guy had his weaknesses. False teeth. He had a pacemaker put in.
He had glasses, yeah.
Obviously not the same as where I'm from, but this is a distant cousin of humans. So you're right. It is really it seems so obvious watching it, knowing that he's on Earth. Because it's kind of being fed to you.
But no, and even if you've seen this movie 100 times, that end shot still is a gut punch because his reaction is just so classic. It doesn't take away from it the fact that you now know from the first frame that they're right back on Earth. It doesn't change it. It's crazy.
Now, from what I understand, they built a half-scale replica of the torch.
Yes, correct.
And the crown of the Statue of Liberty because they needed that shot above
just
it.
that angle. Yeah, the above shot down on the beach.
And they built scaffolding, I think, 70 feet high, so they could look down from.
Just on that, yeah. It is a little inaccurate, though, if you want to, in reality, because the torch was changed out in '86 when they redid the Statue of Liberty for was it the 200th anniversary?
Oh, so that's not that torch
It's not
anymore?
No. I mean, the movie came out in '68, so they stuck with what was originally on there. But
well, according to the sequels, the apes took over in like the mid '70s. So our timeline is out the window. Yeah.
But do we agree that Dr. Zeus was right to hide all this from his brethren?
I mean, I don't think so.
No.
I'm the kind of person who thinks more information is better. Yeah.
But not to his detriment. He's like, if I let these people know, then.
I mean, I tend to think that, that the idea of a privileged class that has information that no one else has, I just obviously am just not a fan of that.
But it is what's happening now. It does happen.
Yes, it does happen, but the whole point of the movie is that it shouldn't happen.
No, I get it. But I understand he knows the follies of man and the ramifications if they were to suddenly
so he is protecting the populace.
Correct. Yeah, he's looking at it like, all right, these are my people now. We got to just pretend this crap didn't happen.
It would challenge every belief and every structure that they knew.
Oh yeah, it would
send their civilization into chaos.
Chaos, right? Yeah, because that's like, listen, if aliens came down today and they're like, yeah, we came here a couple million years ago, screwed around with a couple monkeys, and you're the offspring. We don't know who this Jesus guy is you're talking about.
Is this ape society any more civilized than humans?
No,
they're not.
No, we just
they've already they've already duplicated most of humanity's mistakes. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because immediately, like you said, the classes, the orangutans.
Yeah. The other thing was kind of like a no-brainer. Christina brought up they should have been looking at the constellations at night, and the fact that the apes are speaking English. They're on a different planet.
Right. Well, that's
language.
Alien. That's any space movie where all of a sudden you could communicate with these people. I can't go to Europe and communicate with someone in Italy. If I speak English, forget it. John Chambers, who did the special effects, actually he got an honorary award for makeup, which wasn't even an Academy Award category until 1981. No. That's crazy.
Right, which Rick Baker received, right? The first
81,
first award for makeup.
Yep.
Who actually did the special effects makeup for the 2001 version.
Right.
Yeah.
And King Kong as well, the 76
wow.
version.
And Star Wars, listen, Baker's been around. American Werewolf in London.
So, but it was nominated for a couple of Academy Awards. Jerry Goldsmith was nominated, rightly so.
Who'd he lose to?
I don't know.
I
do not know.
That's right up there with Kubo losing out.
And I think Best Costume Design, was the other one that it was nominated for.
Yeah.
Even though poor Linda Harrison's just dressed like Raquel Welch from 1 Million Years BC.
They actually asked Raquel Welch to play that part.
Because
really?
They just
That's typecasting.
Because they just wanted a girl who looked good in the costume. But I actually read a lot about Linda Harrison before we did the show. Like, how she got into acting, and how she even ended up in the part. Obviously it had a lot to do with Richard Zanuck, but she had been signed initially by Fox on so people used to go into the studio system, right? So they weren't signed for a project, they were signed
by
to
studio.
the studio. And she was signed for a 60-day option initially, and one of her assignments was to be a date for a premiere for one of the Fox flacks.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So an escort.
Right. So it was one of the last things she did before her option ran out. And the guy happened to be the personal assistant of Richard Zanuck. And she met Zanuck at the after party and they fell in love. And because of that, she got a 7-year contract with Fox.
Yeah.
And
Love is a many splendid thing.
And then they had Raquel Welch was one of the women they wanted for the movie. They wanted Ursula Andress. They wanted someone else. I forgot offhand.
So, somebody that wasn't a name like those other two were.
Right.
Well, Ingrid Bergman turned down the role of Dr. Zira.
But before we move on from Linda Harrison, have you ever seen Richard Zanuck? This man is the closest.
He is not. Yeah.
He is the closest to a human Skeletor that we have.
I think you have referred to him as Skeletor in past episodes.
And when he speaks, because he's all over the bonus features, he talks like Skeletor. He talks through his jaw like Planet of the Apes is a great movie. It's like his jaw is wired shut. Like
a month before shooting, they still hadn't cast Nova. And Heston wrote in his diary, the casting problem's really Nova. Who will do it and how naked can she be?
Oh, there you go. Well, studio notes.
And
meanwhile, Heston, yeah, okay. I'll take my pants off.
Yeah, so Zanuck ended up going to the director and saying, would you consider Linda? And that was how she got into the movie. And she said that she was so intimidated because she was a huge fan of Heston, that he was always sort of helping her and how she should turn her head before the camera and all this kind of stuff. So she said he was very helpful to her. She was only 21 years old and she was completely intimidated by his star factor.
I do like the scene where she's in the cage and they're trying to drag him out. And every time she comes up to the cage, the ape's banging her down. And as soon as he stops, she immediately comes right back up to the cage with her face. And I thought that says a lot about her character, that she's now invested in Taylor. Yeah, I mean, she didn't really have much to do other than the fawn over him, but
she did what she could with the part.
Yep.
For what it's worth. I mean, it's not really a character per se.
No, although I did have a dog I named Nova, so he was named after the superhero. Still a cool name. Do you know Sammy Davis Jr. owned one of the lawgiver statues?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess there was 2 of them that were made, but Sammy Davis Jr. owned one of them.
So this was a huge success, goes without saying. Premiere was in February of 68 and then wide release in April of 68. The total budget came out to just under $6 million and it made $33 million. So it was a huge success for 20th Century Fox. That made them realize that they needed to do a sequel, which
is crazy.
Yes.
Because they banged out one movie a year for a 5-year window.
Yeah. So it really became the first sci-fi franchise.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Don't tell me that Star Wars was the first, because you can't even equate James Bond, because each one of those movies is standalone, even though you may have other. This is the ongoing saga of this. You can sit down and watch these, and they all kind of hold together a little bit. I mean.
Yeah, they attempt, even though it doesn't really hold up to scrutiny, they do attempt a narrative. Roddy McDowell, of course.
He's like the C-3PO before Anthony Daniels was C-3PO.
Yeah, I know.
He has always played, he's been in every movie, correct?
He's not in the second one.
He is not in the second one.
He's not in the second one.
And you'd never know it if you didn't read that, right? The guy in the second one is doing a dead-on impersonation of Roddy McDowell.
Huh. But even later, he wasn't playing Cornelius. He was playing, was it Galen?
Caesar.
It was Caesar. Okay, he was Caesar.
In
it's
Conquest.
been so long. It's been the one where they come back. The 2 of them come back, and she's pregnant. That's Escape, right?
That's Escape.
That's Escape. That one seemed to be on TV all the time. That's Ricardo Montalban. Yep.
It was.
Yep.
So it was reviewed very well, except by the New York Times.
Oh, shockingly.
They said it's no good at all, but fun at moments.
No good at all. Speaking of no good at all, Tim Burton's movie. Oh, no.
The New York Times didn't like Yojimbo either, so
There you go.
that
So
tells
they
you
got-
something
yeah.
about their reviewers.
I did read that Heston had the flu pretty much through this whole thing. I don't know if that played into the way he played this character, but maybe he was a little more grumpier on set. Do you know in the scene where he's escaping through the city and he runs through the museum? You see at one point there's this giant like lobster claw that's at the center of the museum up on the top floor. You just catch it for a brief minute. Jim will appreciate this. It is a cast of the creature's arm from Forbidden Planet.
Really?
Yeah, thought that was a neat little.
I thought you were going to tell me it was from Ibra.
That would have been even more impressive. Yeah.
And you know what's funny is that they have some dailies on the Blu-ray. So you get to see like the take, and then you get to see the setup before the take, and then the breakdown after the take. And as he's running through the museum, all those stuffed humans are actually actors that are trying.
Real people, because you see them kind of like there's one close up, and you see him just kind of like holding it together. Yeah.
But it's funny at the dailies before the scene, you see him get into position and trying so hard to stay still.
Just stay
and,
there.
Yeah,
that's crazy. And that's where we see Dodge.
Yeah,
He's
Dodge
been
is stuffed.
He was taxidermied.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, poor Dodge.
So you were saying, Jeff, at the beginning of the conversation that this really was the first movie to have a big merchandising push, but it was after the fact, which is funny. It didn't really come out at the time the movie was released.
Was it more like once the other movies came out?
Yeah,
or?
like around 74, 75 after the TV show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Then
because I mean,
Mego,
once you make an animated cartoon, then it's like all bets are off.
Yeah, Mego really came out with an entire line of Planet of the Apes based on the movies and on the TV shows.
Yeah, and I had I do remember I think it was the Aurora model kit of Dr. Cornelius.
Really?
Yeah.
But Mego, they were showing some vintage commercials. They had a Forbidden Zone playset. They had an Apes City playset.
Was it just like a
it was
desert
scarecrows,
with
and it was like a cardboard
really?
backdrop or something. Yeah.
Interesting.
Just something really to have an excuse to put your figures in front of.
There you go.
Gold Key Comics had the first comic adaptation,
Yep.
1970, that was released. And then Marvel came out with some comics a little bit later on. But classic, it cannot be disputed. That
No,
is a classic.
You cannot. And you think about it like any other symbol that they could have added at the end of that movie, I don't think would have had the same impact. To me, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you know what the Statue of Liberty is and what it represents. Like, I can't think of anything else that would be iconic that would immediately.
And I think the ending credits, because we were talking about with Yojimbo how it's just an abrupt end.
Yeah, right.
So it's like kind of, it doesn't give you time to catch your breath over what you've just witnessed.
Right.
This really does, because you get that the lapse of the waves over the credits.
I was going to say, because you brought it up at the beginning that, when he's in the ship and the nebulous and all that stuff in the water kind of sound effects. And you basically start and end with that.
So I think it's almost designed to let the audience catch their breath and think about what they've
let it wash over you.
Yeah. Nice.
No, this is about as close to a $5 as you're going to get. If it's not $5, I was so happy to watch this again. Beautiful to look at.
It has kind of lost its luster when taken into consideration with its sequels, because they kind of lessen in quality.
They watered it down, right? But it stands on its own.
It does. I don't know if I would give it 5 buckets personally.
No, I'm going to say it's about as close as you're going to. I would go like 4.99. I mean, I don't have any quibbles outside of the damn see no evil, hear no evil.
I'd go 4.5. I'd do an easy 4.5.
Okay.
Say 4.
Yeah.
I like it. It's not my favorite movie of all time. I appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me though. I'm actually a huge fan of the recent series, and one of the things I loved about the recent series is the way they tried to explain certain things that occurred in the original.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the fact that the humans don't speak and stuff like that, and it's so hard for me to look at it now without taking the prequels into context.
Right, because they take pains to establish that it's in the same universe.
Even the fact that because there was a lot of background stories of the spaceship launching.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so stuff like that. We need to go back and revisit those because I did read something that there's talk of a fourth one.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't remember where the last one ended off, but
I hate the idea of them doing it without Andy Serkis, who's
I know. Well, he'll be
like-
directing Venom too.
who's just phenomenal. I think he's unbelievable in those films.
And I'm glad that he's getting the recognition now because that, for the longest time, was just kind of like an unceremonious job. Of, you got ping pong balls on your face and you're just acting out.
Yeah,
So-
but when you see Caesar in the new movies, like those are Andy Serkis's eyes.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely.
That's his performance.
Yeah.
And I am glad that people are finally starting to recognize that these are performances because I feel like so many sci-fi movies are moving toward a motion capture characters. So but there's still an actor there who's performing, who's doing all the work. So
Yep. No, I agree. Very cool. I'm glad we watched it. All right, we're done.
So
Cool. Next week.
Yeah. No. This is the best part of the show when we get to rally against something. We get to unify and rally.
I don't think we've ever chosen a movie specifically so I can razz on it.
I want to tell you before we start. So we watched. I always watch all the movies with my family. They have their own buckets to give at the end of this. By the way.
Okay. Yes.
And my son said when he finished, "Mom, I wish you picked something else." And I said, "I didn't pick it. Jeff picked it." And he goes, "Oh, he's the one I can blame for my pain."
but is he's talking about the second one?
Yes, he's talking about the second one.
Is this the first time he's ever seen the original Planet of the Apes?
No, he had watched it before.
Okay.
Yeah,
and what was his take? What's his take on this one, though?
On the 2001 or the
No, the 68.
Oh, 68. Oh, he likes the 68 one. Yeah,
Okay.
he appreciates.
But it doesn't
that
seem
one.
dated to him. It doesn't seem like the special effects aren't quite there. It's.
I think I've said this to you guys before. I've watched a lot of old movies with him from the time he was small. So I feel like in some ways he's better able to appreciate older movies than other kids his age because he didn't only watch new things with like full of CG. Like he actually the last movie he saw before everything locked down was I was on tour in Australia, but him and my husband went to see 2001 on the big screen.
Oof,
so
that's a tough movie to take
like,
in.
So like he's that kind of kid. So Planet of the Apes, he doesn't even think about things like that.
No, well, I mean, I only asked because I shared this with my son, but only after the new Planet of the Apes, the new prequels, and of course, these kids are spoiled with the special effects and, like you said, the motion capture and everything so realistic. To suddenly go back to, people in costumes, kind of, with very prosthetic makeup that if you look deep enough, you could see where the seams are and whatnot.
Right. And some of these scenes, when it's going right into their open mouths, you can see their human mouth.
Well, I mean, even Cornelius, I mean, there's some lines of dialogue where his mouth just doesn't match up because you just can't. The lips, there's a point where Cornelius and Zira kiss lip to lip, but they don't even have lips. So it's just, they're just like buttoned muzzles together. But you accept it for what it is. And my son actually walked away from this movie and he was more impressed with the soundtrack than anything. And that to me made me happy because, don't get bogged down in whether or not something is absolutely looking real. It's just, you go with the storyline. So
yeah, it is time for us to go to the concession stand. So
because I'm hungry.
It's our pleasure to welcome you to your friendly drive-in theater. For the information of those who are attending the drive-in for the first time, the following hints will make you feel at home and add to your enjoyment. Firstly, if you've not already done so, remove the speaker from the stand and place it in your car. Secondly, adjust the volume control to suit your requirements. Right for loud, left for soft. We must issue this warning. No attempt should be made to disconnect the speaker. To do so will immediately register a red light in our control room. Our ultra-modern snack bar is now open and ready to serve you. How about fresh fillets of fish with chips and salad? Tender steak with eggs, chips, and salad. A big cup of hot chips or fish and chips. thick, crunchy hamburger. Giant-sized hot dogs laced with sauce or mustard. Banana fritters with rich, full cream. Steaming hot coffee. Icy orange or lemon drink. Smooth, creamy ice cream. And a great range of sweets and chocolates. Our snack bar is open for service. One final word. Before leaving, replace the speaker on its stand, then drive forward and move to your left. You must never reverse out of your position. Thanks, everyone. We trust you have a very pleasant evening.
Okay, we're back. And this is the 2001 remake of Planet of the Apes.
And I apologize.
Embarking upon.
Again, I've already apologized once to my partners in crime here, and I'll apologize to the listeners.
And
now, there are people on IMDb who like this movie. So
I mean, I think every movie has a movie.
I know.
Yeah,
like,
I
has
know,
somebody who
but-
likes it.
But I will tell you, much like Mandy and Color Out of Space, you do not watch these back to back, which is what I did yesterday, because you immediately see every freaking flaw in this movie that
Well,
does
you
not
see
work.
that. You don't
Why?
have to watch them back to back to see that.
No, but this had so much potential. This was
On paper, this is exciting, right?
yes, absolutely. It's the pedigree is astronomical. I mean, you got Danny Elfman, you got Tim Burton. I mean, Mark Wahlberg. You could have chosen a better lead, but you got a pretty stellar cast going on there. Chris Christopherson, who showed up for about a minute,
Do you know why he's in the movie?
because he owed somebody money.
No, because he has 8 children. I don't know if you knew this.
No, I didn't.
And they're all huge fans of Tim Burton. So he just
Listen,
wanted
I
to
would
be
have.
in a,
So it was sight unseen, right? He just said,
Right.
yes, I'll do
yeah,
it.
he wanted to be in a Burton movie.
Who
But you know-
wouldn't?
What was super interesting, I don't know if you guys went and read the Wikipedia page about this movie, but the remake had been in sort of in development hell for
Yes,
almost
for
20
years.
Yeah.
Years.
And all
So
kinds
many
of,
directors, yeah.
high profile directors had been attached. Oliver Stone, Sam
Yep.
Raimi, James Cameron, Peter Jackson. And if you go through and read all of the ideas, the various ideas that they had, some of them were fantastic, would have made great movies and would have been something really original. Instead, you end up getting this incredibly jumbled mess because the plot of this
it is a jumbled down mess, and it's washed. Yeah, it's watered down.
It is.
There's no Burton bite to this whatsoever.
There's no impact that the first one has. I
think the only thing new they brought to the table is our chips are going to fly. I saw the Wizard of Oz once. Monkeys can fly. We're going to do that.
It's just I wrote in my notes, it's such a bland, almost workman-like film. It doesn't have Burton's signature look or feel.
Nope.
And if it was a passion project, and the first thing that came to mind to compare it to in Burton's filmography is Mars Attacks, right? Mars Attacks was a passion project for Burton, like a really weird old thing that he wanted to make into a film, and it has such a obviously Burton look and feel, and he could have done that with this movie.
Yeah.
And that's what was missing. That's what's so exciting about the idea of Tim Burton.
The ingredients
doing
were
this.
there. Everything was there. And it it starts right out, with basically the same setup.
No, I don't know.
Until
The
the
opening
spaceship.
setup is so overly complicated. You're like, what? Why are they? I don't understand.
No, we did get the.
Let's talk about this.
All right,
let's talk
go.
about
Let's
this.
go.
So they're on the Oberon, which is a space station.
Yep. Which I thought prepubescent Anakin took out in the first Star Wars movie, but because it looks like just a blatant ripoff of that space station.
But it's in the year 2029.
Yeah.
So not too far from where we are now.
2020.
Is that it really tries to distance itself from the first movie. None of the characters are named the same, even though it is a remake. You don't get any
None of
Zira,
them.
no
Nope.
Cornelius, no Taylor.
Well, but
nothing.
this is the reimagining. This is also where the trouble begins, which is you're going to take the basic premise, but discard anything that made the original what it is.
Wahlberg plays Leo Davidson.
Okay, can we just... He's training chimpanzees in space, and he refers to these freaking things as monkeys. They're not monkeys. This is my issue I had going back to Curious George. A monkey has a tail. A chimp is a primate. He's a chimp. He's a chimpanzee. That's like 101. So he lost all of his credibility right out of the gate.
And he's a jerk, though, just like Taylor.
Just like...
Yep. They're training these animals to go into dangerous missions. The very first thing you see is this chimp, and his name is Pericles.
Pericles.
They encounter some electromagnetic space storm, and they want to send Pericles into the storm. Now, Pericles is not a CGI chimp.
No, he's a
he is
chimp.
A real chimp.
Yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure he was the same chimp that was they used in Project X with Matthew Broderick.
There's a little bit of a disconnect at the end because they talk about other chimps, like at the end of the movie, taking over the Oberon. But you only see, I think, Pericles in the beginning of this. Are there other?
No,
chimps
there's cages. There's other cages with other chimpanzees in them.
But they're not like violent chimps or anything like that.
No, they're space monkeys. Don't you remember that in Ad Astra? They go nuts.
Gets into this capsule, goes into the electromagnetic storm, and they lose contact.
But this is only after he failed miserably at the when he was in the test simulator. So immediately you see him
goes
flying
crazy
and goes nuts.
ape-ish.
That's because he's working for peanuts. So he's like, I don't get paid enough for this crap.
So they're not proving that this Pericles can hold his own in space.
No,
he can't
so why
even
they
get
even
through
send him in? They come across this cloud nebula that is somehow transmitting back Earth messages, which never plays out. There's no rhyme or reason why they're suddenly being bombarded with these transmissions from Earth from all points in history.
Well, I think that was trying to establish the time
some kind
jump,
of a nexus,
right? That they were there's some kind of a time nexus is going on.
Well, you do see, right, because
their own message played back to them,
which,
right?
You don't think that guy would be like, "Hey, that's me." He doesn't,
because I knew immediately that was him.
That's the guy. That's you, dude. Yeah, apparently he did not read the script.
Pericles goes into the cloud, and then Davidson chases after him. They're like, he's lost. He's going into the cloud.
He's going to sacrifice himself for this damn chimp.
So wait, let's talk about how ridiculous it is that Davidson would just go and jump in a pod. First of all,
like you're jeopardizing this entire spaceship.
And he tiptoes out of the room and does it.
I got the shuttle bay 2 is opening doors. Who the hell did that be?
Let's just talk about the fact that this is a military operation, right? He's in the Air Force.
Air Force. It's an Air Force.
You don't just
unilaterally
make decisions and go off and jump in a pod.
You will not sacrifice my chimp.
Which is the reason the chimps are up there. So,
right. They're doing their job. They're disposable, man. It's hard to tell you. We have more.
So this is where we get into even more of a divergence from the original. So Davidson goes through the cloud himself, and we learn a little bit later that he is thrust forward in time. Thousands of years.
you do see the little time jump thing on his chronometer.
And so he crash lands on this alien planet, and here it really is an alien planet. It's
I was hoping Yoda would come out of that swamp, but that didn't happen either.
Called Ashlar, right? Is that the name of it?
I don't even know. I didn't take that. No, I don't.
So he lands in the year 5021. So it's centuries later.
He looked pretty good for his age.
You did. And he comes across this ape society.
And this is immediately where you compare the drawn out tension that we talked about in the first movie of these three astronauts wandering and then coming across, and it's called Planet of the Apes, and then the reveal of these gorillas is just such an amazing cinematic reveal. And here it's a throwaway. There's no build up, there's no tension. You don't care about this character, and regardless of the fact that Taylor was a jerk, you still were invested. This cat, you don't care, because all he's doing is looking for his chimp. He's now endangered his entire crew, and for his chimpanzee, for his monkey that he keeps calling him monkey.
Who's not even there? Who hasn't even crash landed?
Well, I wonder where Pericles is.
I mean, I feel like everyone in this movie is unlikable. There's not a single character that I like. including the supposedly heroic characters.
No. So that reveal, we're the humans are on the run. We meet Chris Christopherson. He's running by in the jungles, and Leo's just standing there like, what's going on? And then you got the apes flying after them, and it's just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess we're into it.
And like I said, there's no vistas, there's no breathtaking cinematography. It's all you can tell it's filmed indoors on set. All these outside scenes are
just
filmed
ruined
indoors.
it for me. Next thing you're going to tell me they're not real apes.
Except for the scene where they clearly shot on the lava fields in Hawaii. Because if you've ever been to Hawaii, you immediately recognize them.
But again, so go back. The original movie was able to take you to Arizona desert and make it look like an alien landscape. Mm-hmm. You go to Hawaii, and yes, the lava flows are very organic. They're very textural, and yet you see them, and you're like, oh, they're filming in Hawaii.
Yep. Like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, they're in Hawaii.
You're not even going to dress it up with, like, purple plants or something. It's just like, oh, look, there's a Hotel Luau behind them.
I just want to make a note. So when you see the initial group of humans, right, you're introduced to Dana, the Nova analog in this movie, right? And all I can say is that she has some, like, seriously long wear lipstick. Her lipstick does not budge throughout the whole movie. All I could think was, wow, it's amazing. Like, they don't even have food, but her lips are perfect.
Well, maybe they were staying from the berries she was eating off the plants.
Perfect.
But that's true with all these humans in this movie. Like it's like the
said,
best
the
of humanity is living in the jungle
had, like,
here.
shaved legs and didn't look like half a gorilla herself.
But like all the men here, like male models, they're all fit and everything else.
Oh yeah. But this is where we're introduced to General Thade.
Thade. Played by Tim Roth. Now,
he is pretty
pretty scary.
I'm going to say he is probably the bright point as far as actors go in this.
Now, apparently in this movie, apes can jump like the Hulk.
Well, that's what I'm saying. This is the one thing they brought to the table, which is, you know what? My monkey's not going to run.
It's like, why even ride horses? Why do they have horses if they can,
So, and you can tell it's all wire work. And it just, especially at the end when there's this big fight and all of a sudden Helen Bonham Carter's flying around like she's friggin' Spider-Man. She's a spider monkey.
Now, she's the closest thing we have to an ape character from the original because she's really in the Zira role.
But she's got much more human-like features than Zira did. I feel like they kind of downplayed the monkey aspect a little bit.
They gave her the Rachel from Friends.
And this is where you get the first cringeworthy moment, which is they repurposed the line, "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape," which is Leo's on the ground, and he goes to reach for something, and it's a friggin' gorilla's foot, and he's like, "Get your paws off me, you damn dirty, stinking human." And it's just like,
what a waste. What a waste. Yeah, don't even bother with that line if you're not.
It's like, I see what you did there.
Can we just fast forward to
because I didn't take notes.
We don't have to summarize the plot.
No, there is no plot. Because there was a good half an hour where I didn't write a single note. Because the less said about this, the better.
Well, what's interesting is that I saw this in the theater when it came out for the same reason you guys did, because I was a Burton fan.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I saw it, and I had forgotten long stretches of it. And when I watched it again, I realized why. And I think I was nodding off during the movie, or maybe like I know for sure when I was watching it this time, I definitely spaced out intermittently.
Yeah.
I did find myself writing extensive notes for the first movie while watching this movie.
Well, when we got to the end, I'm like, did I miss something here? And so I watched the ending again. I'm like, no, I don't think I did.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. But that whole dinner scene. So the one thing is that the special Rick Baker, we brought up the fact that Rick Baker did the special effects, and they're very impressive. The orangutans look like big fat orangutans with the floppy, I don't even know what you call them, the big floppy cheeks,
the big crest around their faces.
I mean,
right?
Paul Giamatti is the creepiest he's creepy just as a human.
Well, he's one of these actors where the makeup guy's like, ooh, I can't wait to get my hands on this
Imagine
guy.
this. Like, the only person I could imagine that would be even creepier is Steve Buscemi in that role. Right? It's like, just put some hair on him and let's go. Yeah. And then we have a Charlton Heston cameo. And again, he ruins it. Somehow, he takes another classic line from this movie, and somehow he is able to promote the NRA all in the same sentence.
Well, and Heston is the only one too whose makeup looks really bad because you can tell he didn't want it around his eyes. So like you can see the skin around his eyes.
Well, he's doing his whole performance from bed too, so it's like, can you just write me laying down?
I read some stuff. Tim Roth said that if he knew he had to act against Charlton Heston, he would not have done this movie.
I read that too because he was distraught about Heston and the NRA.
Yeah.
And he turned down the role of Snape to do this movie. He would have been Professor Snape in all the Harry Potter. Tim Roth.
Tim Roth?
Tim Roth.
Boy, I can't see anybody but...
Now you can't. No, you can't. But
I know.
But Tim Roth is a great actor. He could
absolutely. Like I said, he's the high point. He's the high point of this whole movie. You actually start rooting for this character.
No, why? Because again, sort of like with the way Andy Serkis is in the newer films, like he's really like using his eyes to great effect. Like you know. Every time he was on screen, my son was going, "Oh, he's giving me chills."
He's a very formidable.
He's the only one that's committed to his role, I think, in this movie.
I agree. I absolutely agree. If it wasn't for his performance, this would be a complete and utter waste, especially except for like I said, some of the makeup special effects. But yeah. And then a couple set pieces. I will say the crash spaceship at the end, which they go out of their way to mirror the scene where he comes across the Statue of Liberty. It's the exact same down shot of the crash Oberon. Sorry, didn't mean to ruin it for you. And it's splintered. The spinal casings of the ship are split apart, and it looks just like the spires of the crown of the Statue of Liberty as they're riding up on horseback.
So this is what I want to talk about is the ending. So maybe we can talk this through and have a better understanding of what's actually going on here. So there's a big final confrontation between the apes and the humans. And you do get a sense of the scope of this ape civilization because you see a lot more apes in this than you do in the original movie. Yeah. So it's a population of apes. And they find the Oberon. And what they've explained is that while Wahlberg's character, Davidson, has been pushed forward in time, the Oberon also crash landed on the same planet, but they were not pushed forward in time.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. So, what was considered their present.
So they go through the cloud, and whatever portal or whatever they had to go through to get to this planet, they were in their present when they crash landed.
Yeah. And why did they crash? Because they were looking for him.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. And the apes that had remained on their ship took them over.
Yep.
And thus spawned this Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. So it's all his fault. It's all his fault. So does that mean that the humans are there? Were remnants of the human crew?
Yes.
Right.
Everyone there is like a descendant of the
Oberon. So the Oberon is their chariots of the gods. So this is what brought them to Earth.
Right.
Or whatever the planet you want to call it is. Yeah.
And they call the Oberon the Temple of Kalima, which is just
that's like Voyager. That's like V'ger. That's like V'ger from Star Trek, which is the crust and rust had covered up the whole name, which was the Caution Live Animals.
Right.
Which is where the animals were all kept. Yeah, I don't know. He's like suddenly a messiah, and all these humans show up to let's see the humans that defied the apes. How did he defy them? They said at one point they're like, watch this when he's feisty. What, because you grabbed your foot? Like, he hasn't done anything. At least Taylor was like, screw this, I'm out of here. Like, he was doing everything in his power to get out of here. This guy was just like...
It would make more sense if the humans here also could not talk, because then there would be reason.
Yes, thank you. There is no... no, we're fully functioning humans. We just bow before the apes. Because we don't have weapons. Oh, here's a stick. Oh, no, I do have a weapon. He even says it when they get to when the big confrontation comes. The gorilla actually says, "Crap, they have weapons. We can't defeat them. They have sticks." It is such a mess.
And let's talk about Thade now at the end of the movie. Mm-hmm. So he follows Davidson into the wreck of the Oberon, and he's got his gun. And Davidson manages to bring down a door and trap Thade.
Which still works.
So, which still works
How
after
many millennia?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fuel rods are still just enough to control the door.
So Thade again is going ape in this room, and he's shooting
no
everywhere,
pun intended. Yeah.
and everything's bouncing back at him, and he finally ends up in the fetal position under a desk, right? In this, in
he's
this
been
cockpit.
defeated. Yeah, he's been neutered.
And then you get Pericles come down.
I was going to say that Pericles comes down first.
Right, because how he gets
Pericles
the gun.
shows up just in time to get bitch slapped.
Right, because
it takes him out with one punch. All the gorillas bow before. Oh my God, the prophecies are true. He has come back from the heavens.
But what has he been doing? So Pericles did get pushed forward in time, just like Davidson did.
To me, if you're going to follow the time travel conundrum, it would have been instantaneous for him. Like he would have just magically showed. Like if he disappeared in the cloud, he would immediately just showed up right where he was, oblivious to the fact that 1 billion years have passed. Just like Leo had shown up 12 days prior.
Right.
Though it makes me super sad because he goes and he crawls into his cage.
Because it's his one,
because it's his home, and that scene makes me very sad.
No, that's what I said. Pericles shows up to save everybody only to get beat down. But he does live. He does survive.
And he stays there. So Leo is the only one
immediately
that
now
leaves.
sees the spaceship, and he's like,
dude,
dude, I'm stealing your ship. You want a helmet? You want a spacesuit? I'm sure that there's probably a bunch of them still in that ship. No, I'm good. No helmet. I'm going back home.
So here's where this just falls apart, I think, for anybody watching it.
If it hasn't already. If you're invested up to this point, this is where you're like, what?
So he goes and he manages to conquer the space-time thing, and he goes back to his own time, crash lands in Washington on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. Comes out, and it's not Lincoln anymore, but it's Thade sitting there in the chair. So, and they don't bother to explain it.
No, because... Go ahead.
Apes show up, police apes show up, and it's
Gorillas,
a world of Earth is now a world of apes.
Yeah, and it just fades to black.
Yeah. So you're like, what does this mean?
It's a twist ending for the sake of having a twist ending, but it makes absolutely no sense. Because, like you said, you see Thade curled up. So how did he? He has
no means. He has no means to get there.
Right.
Davidson took the only working shuttle.
Right.
Because Davidson's shuttle is in the swamp. And destroyed.
Yeah. Burton did claim that the ending was supposed to make no sense. It was simply to set up for the next director, which all of them were signed for a sequel, by the way. Because you don't just make one movie nowadays. Everyone's lined up for multiple movies.
And this movie was so bad, it was a success, and they did not make a sequel.
Damn straight. Listen, if you really want to screw with audiences, let them go back to Earth and find out that they're all alligator people. Don't even bring the apes into it.
Yeah.
I would have been like, dude, what the fuck? That would have been like, all right, now I need to see a sequel. So I don't care that somehow Thade magically made it back. So what? Thade went back to Civil War and freed the white people.
Yeah, he would have had to do a lot of work to make that planet an entire ape planet.
For them, not only that, but for them to make a memorial for him in his honor and replace a Lincoln.
I don't know.
I did. Yeah, that, like you said, it just goes completely off the rails right then and there.
I don't know. I feel like it went off the rails an hour and a half earlier.
Yeah, no, you said 20 minutes in, you were ready to. Burton did claim that he'd rather jump out a window than make a sequel, and I would say the same thing. In the India screening, they did cut the Leo Davidson and what was Helen Bonham Carter's character when they kissed? They cut that scene. Apparently, human monkey kissing is frowned upon in India.
Verboten. We talked about Pierre Boulle at the beginning of the episode here. He was involved in the Tim Burton, in A Matter of Speaking. Specifically, this contains a lot of Boulle.
Oh man, you waited the whole episode for that.
I had to drop that at some point.
Bravo. The only other thing I'm going to bring to the table, which is apparently Rick Baker dressed up as one of the original Planet of the Apes, and he would go to drive-ins and terrorize patrons dressed in character, run around. I thought that was fun. I'm like, all right, man. So, other than that, I have absolutely nothing else to add to this.
As Christina was saying before, the backstory of this is much more interesting than the actual.
It is.
Just wish the end result was a little more spectacular.
Well, you know, it was weird. One of the iterations, Arnold Schwarzenegger was supposed to be the lead.
Which I probably, not that I'm going to say he's a better protagonist, but
I think he would have been better than
you can't help but root for Schwarzenegger, no matter what he's in. Yeah, is that an ape?
But before that, when it was first in pre-production in 1988, I think they were thinking either Tom Cruise or Charlie Sheen.
Charlie Sheen. Wow.
Because he was just coming off of Platoon at the time in Wall Street. So
and
that
was
a big name.
Major League came out 88 or 89. So right around, interesting. I don't know. We'll never know. Because you know what? We've talked about it. It's now forgotten. We can move on to the prequels, which are far superior movies.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yes, they have a much better narrative. Somebody actually thought it through.
Are we going to even bother with buckets on this? Can we give more?
This may be my lowest bucket ever.
Have you ever given one?
I have never given one. I actually, I wrote 2, but just talking about this makes me angry.
I don't know if I would give it 1. I think I would maybe give it a half, and that's charitable.
Which is sad.
I gave it a half a bucket myself.
Half a bucket.
I'm putting it on par with Condor Man. I mean, still the low point for me is Element, which I gave 0.
Element.
So,
yeah.
My son, who, as you know, is always trying to up the buckets. First of all, he's personally very angry at you, Jeff.
Listen, fair enough. Fair enough. Listen, does he want his $3.99 back? I'll mail him a check today.
And he gave it 3/4 of a bucket and gave me specific parameters: half for Paul Giamatti and the other quarter for Tim Roth's Dagger Eyes.
No, I would have reversed that.
And my husband said 1/3.
1/3. That is very specific.
Yeah, so we're all dealing in fractions here.
Yeah. 2 and 3
It's like not even a bucket. It's like 1/2 kernel.
It is. It is like just a handful of kernels. Not even buttered, by the way. No butter on this one.
Apparently, it won Worst Remake at the 22nd Golden Raspberry Awards.
Well deserved. Well deserved. I've brought this movie up numerous times that it incites my.
Of that particular year or of all time?
No, of that year. I guess. Yeah.
Interesting. I'll stick with. I'll go 1. 1.
Still more generous than my son.
Yeah. Again, yeah. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to give. Okay. Let's go. Let's get off this. I don't want to talk about that.
But that's the whole thing, though, is that that you, on some level, like you said, Jeff, nobody sets out to make a bad movie. And you know that there's a lot of people who put a lot of effort into the film. But when the end result is so unappealing, it's hard to,
I know,
separate. To give it more credit because it's just, like I said, it's such a jumbled mess and it's so bland. It just doesn't have anything going for it.
Bland that's a very good descriptive. Okay, let's move on.
We've got a themed confessional this week.
I like this too, Christina.
Ties in with our series going on now, remake. So, Christina, what is your confessional question this week?
Confessionals.
So, we've talked about music the last couple of weeks, and obviously now we're talking about remakes. So I thought to sort of tie these two things together thematically, what is the best song cover / remake that you know of that's actually better, in your opinion?
I was going to say, it's a very subjective what's considered better than an original.
The original.
But I did have to dig deep on this one. I thought that, and I was surprised because there was a couple songs I did not realize were cover songs.
Well, I thought it too, right off the bat. I was actually listening to one when I thought of this question. So, for me, I have 2 of them. The first one is Sweet Jane, covered by the Cowboy Junkies. I think that's superior to the
and that's
original.
An often covered song as well.
Yeah.
And that version is probably head and shoulders above the original.
Yeah.
And all the remakes that have come before and since.
Yeah, just think Margot Timmons' voice is so gorgeous, and it's like so perfectly suited to that song. And the second one is one of my favorite songs of all time, and certainly the best cover of this particular song is "The Passenger" by Susie and the Banshees, and of course it's an Iggy Pop song originally. Yeah.
Iggy Pop produced by David Bowie.
Yeah.
As well, the original.
Yeah. And actually, I feel like this is true for a lot of Iggy Pop songs. A lot of his songs get covered, and the covers become more popular than the original.
And his originals, yes.
Yeah.
Well, China Girl, a case in point, right?
Right.
That was originally Iggy Pop.
So those are my two.
Nice. I think what we're going to do is when we're done with this segment, we will make sure that we post links to all the songs or videos, probably on YouTube.
Yeah, we should
on our website. Because some of this stuff we may not, no one has ever heard of or actually heard the cover, so it's fun to share. Jim, you want to go next? You want me to
Sure.
go?
Yeah, I'll go.
Okay.
For me, a successful cover is something that transcends the original, like not a note for note remake, an artist that will bring their own stamp to it.
Yes, correct. A unique
stand on
take
its own.
on. Yep.
Right. So my first is, I've got two as well. My first ties in, and this is maybe a bit obvious to those that know me, but it ties in directly with my favorite movie, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And Jeff, as you know, the theme song, not the theme, but the main song in the movie is called "We Have All the Time in the World," sung by Louis Armstrong. In that, we have all the time in the world. And the remake is done. The song isn't that well known only to people that know the movie, but the remake, even less so, is done by a group called My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
And it is just an amazing version. It's still the same melody, and they don't really go from that, but it turns it into like an early 90s alternative take on the song.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. So anybody that's never heard their version and is familiar with the song, go seek it out. My Bloody Valentine, We Have All the Time in the World. And my second one is a bit more obvious because the original is an acquired taste, Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, my personal favorite is Rufus Wainwright's version, but a lot of people love the Jeff Buckley version as well. It's a beautiful song, and Leonard Cohen's take is very gravelly, and he recorded it later on in his life, so his voice was even deeper than it normally was. So it's an acquired taste, but to have someone like Jeff Buckley or Rufus Wainwright who have much more vocal range and give it a possibility that maybe wasn't there to begin with. I know I'm angering a lot of Leonard Cohen fans. But
Listen.
But
It's
interesting. It's a song that's been covered so much. There was actually a book that came out a few years ago called The Holy and the Broken, which is literally just about all of the covers of Hallelujah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love the John Cale version personally.
Yes,
but,
you can get that on the Shrek soundtrack of all places.
Yes. Yeah.
Along with Nick Cave, I might add. But.
Yes.
Wait, Nick Cave is on the Shrek soundtrack?
He is.
And Tom Waits, Little Drop of Poison, is in one of the Shrek movies too.
Wow. Speaking of Shrek, how about the Smash Mouth version of Monkey's I Am a Believer?
Jory's out on that one.
That didn't make my top. I just brought it as a note though. So two songs that I didn't realize were cover songs, and of course, just I've already showed my ignorance when it comes to music early on this episode. But Rick Springfield's "I've Done Everything for You" was a Sammy Hagar song. I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
There you go. And the other one is,
I don't know if I know that song. What is?
I've done everything for you. You done nothing for me.
Oh, now okay, I know.
It's one of his earlier, but it was a Sammy Hagar. That's a cover song.
Wow.
And the other one was Superman by REM. I didn't realize that was only a single though. It was never.
I
on
knew
the
that.
album.
That was like a B-side of some other bands.
Cliche, yeah. Yep. So, but anyways, I have three. Which so going back to what Jim said, which is, listen, you take like a Weezer version of Toto, and it's a note for note recreation. That's fine and dandy. But I love when someone can take a song and repurpose it and format it and make it completely different. There's numerous punk bands that are out there that do cover versions of friggin' Take Me Home, Country Roads, that just takes it to the next level. But Alien Ant Farm did a version of Smooth Criminal, Michael J. Fox, Michael Jackson. That's actually one of my favorites. But I thought you were going to go with Guns N' Roses version of Live and Let Die when you started in with the James Bond thing.
No, I can't listen to that.
No. Well,
like
listen,
if I have the choice between that one and Paul McCartney,
Wings, that song is so unique and so original. But my number one is Simon and Garfunkel's "Sound of Silence" that Disturbed redid, and it again, the song is very entrenched in the '60s and what was going on then. And Disturbed, if you're familiar with this band, they're much more of a I don't even want to say punk, but they're like not even grunge. They're just really kind of down and gritty. I know and he has a very, very raspy take on this. And to me, it takes it and it means something different than what the original was. So, and I love the cover. So,
and actually, just as we were talking about this, I thought of another one, which I'm surprised it didn't come to me originally, which is Gary Jules' cover of Tears for Fears Mad World, which I think is actually like
absolutely
superior.
Because it's such a slow. Yeah, no, I love it. I can't believe that Jim didn't bring up Devo Satisfaction.
No, I hate that version.
Do you really? Do you really? I thought I knew you.
That's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Really? What about Johnny Cash's version of Hurt?
Well, that one's good. I like that one.
That is one of my all-time favorite albums, that Johnny Cash cover album. My son has this on his playlist, and he's playing it one day, and I'm like, how do you even know this song? Not only do you know it, but he has
Christina,
a Johnny...
Does he do the Mercy Seat on that album, Johnny Cash?
I know he covered it, but I don't know if it's on that. I don't have that.
There's only like 7 or 8 songs. I think the album's actually called 8 songs.
You may know a Nick Cave song, and you don't even know it. Because Johnny Cash did cover a Nick Cave song, and it may be on that album.
I might have to look it up.
Mercy Seat is a Nick Cave and the Bad Seed song. So, but actually, now we're talking about Johnny Cash. I thought Social Distortion's cover of Ring of Fire is fantastic.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, we could go down this rabbit hole because there's definitely...
I mean, it's definitely, obviously, it's a subjective thing, but I do think that... some covers are like I said, I love the Cowboy Junkies cover of Sweet Jane just because Margot Timmons' voice is just so well suited to that song. It's almost like it was written for her to sing.
And it seems like the song was written to be in that tempo, and the original version is not. It's a much faster take on it.
Yeah.
And speaking of voices, I've never been a huge Bob Dylan fan, and it's always been my opinion that Dylan songs are better interpreted by other people than Dylan himself because his voice kind of grates on me, and that's a lot of people don't feel the same. But
what's the matter, Jim? You don't like my song?
I think a lot of cover versions of his songs kind of liberate it from that nasal quality of his voice because a lot of his songs are very beautiful, but I can't get past the vocals sometimes. But
Sure. Well, that's the first thing that comes to mind is Jimi Hendrix cover of All on the Watchtower, right? Which is like, is there even a Bob Dylan version? It's like, does anybody listen to that version of the song? I mean, to me, it's a Hendrix song.
Yeah, he owns that song. After he did it, he owned that song.
Which version did they play in Battlestar Galactica? Was it the Dylan version?
I don't remember.
I don't remember now.
I don't remember.
I didn't watch Battlestar Galactica, so I can't answer this question.
A great example of the Dylan stuff is just the soundtrack to "I'm Not There." If you've seen that movie with all the different Dylans, all the different actors and actresses that play Bob Dylan through that movie, and it's a double CD of covers of Bob Dylan songs, and it's really good.
Well, Dylan's one of those songwriters kind of like Iggy Pop, where like it just has so much material, and so many artists have gone in and like taken those seeds and reinterpreted the song.
Indeed.
I'd like to listen to a lot of these songs again, so if we can get our links up there on the Facebook page, then you can all listen too out there. Yep. So there you have our first episode of the Y series. Of the original and our remake. Is it me? Am I up next?
I think you are up. Yeah, I think you're up.
It's me. Okay. The original version of the pair of movies that I'm going to do is an obscure TV movie from 1973. Not sure which of the 3 big networks it aired upon, but it was called Don't Be Afraid of the Dark. And it's about a newly married couple that moves into a new house, and the husband is off at work all the time, and the wife stays at home. And she starts hearing things of little voices that speak specifically to her. coming from one of the vents in their basement.
You make it sound like that doesn't happen to all of us.
And she is trying to tell people that she's hearing things, and there's definitely weird stuff going on in the house, and nobody believes her, least of all her husband. So we'll see how this plays out next week.
Does she know where the light switch is?
The movie was remade, I think, in 2010 with Guy Pearce and Katie Holmes, produced by, or even written or produced by, maybe both, Guillermo del Toro, because this was one of his favorite movies, and he felt the need to get a remake done. But does it match the ominous nature of the original? Well, we'll be the judge of that next week. Don't be afraid of the dark. So if anybody wants to watch it, I think it's on Apple and maybe a couple of other streaming services.
Ooh. That's an ugly looking monster. There's monsters in this. Are there talking dolls?
Well, don't
talking dolls in this, Jim.
Don't spoil it. Don't.
Whoa. I did not sign on for this.
Jeff, it was a TV movie. In
no. I'm talking about the Guy Pearce, Katie Holmes. Oh, hold on. No.
Just like this is a rated R remake. I'm out.
No. Okay, everything for the show. Fine.
Don't be afraid of the dark.
Listen, Tom, don't be afraid of the monkeys. All right, we got Planet of the Apes off our chest. Got that monkey off my back. All right, we'll bring our game next week, kids. I promise.
Yes, we will.
All right, yeah. I will be watching this through clenched fists.
And as always, thank you for listening.
Stay safe. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Stay inside. Wash your hands. Wear a mask.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. If you liked the podcast you just heard, then please follow TMI on all of our social media outlets. First and foremost, email us at tmipodcast2018@gmail.com. That is tmipodcast2018@gmail.com.
And you can follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast2018. Stop over, say hi, give us a compliment. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Make sure you follow us on Instagram as well, which is also TMI_podcast2018.
And of course, we are on Facebook, facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018. And it should be noted, we also have a community page, so join the forum.
And if you like to watch YouTube, you can see us at TMI Podcast 2018, all one word. Look for the popcorn bucket.
Popcorn bucket. Or you could just go to our website, which has every link there, TMIConfessionalspodcast.com. And we'll see you at the concession stand.
We'll save some popcorn for you.